Good afternoon for joining us on our wrap-up session of Let's Talk About Volunteer Programs during Volunteer Appreciation Week. I am so excited today to have Mary Chambers, who is the foster coordinator cat adoption team out of Oregon, here with us today to talk about fostering for Rockstars and all the ways that volunteers help save feline lives in the Northwest. So welcome, Mary. I'm going to kick it off to you and take it away.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. She said I am the foster coordinator at Cat Adoption Team. I've been there since 2017, so going on about 4 years now. And I'm here today to talk about what we use volunteers for in our program. And we use a lot of volunteers. They basically run our program and we wouldn't be able to do it without them. I think you guys are, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask if you'd like. Either way is totally fine. We'll also have some time at the end to, if you guys have any questions. But I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation. Okay, and then present. All right, oops, we're on the last slide. That's not good. Give me just a second. Let's start with the first slide. There we go.
Thanks everyone for coming. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, so sorry about the technical difficulties. Let's get started. So today, like I said, we're talking about volunteers. This picture here is of Anne and Carrie Smith. They are two amazing volunteers that have been a part of the foster program for years, and they are involved in many ways. And we are going to talk about a lot of different ways that foster volunteers are involved that are not just fostering animals. So obviously that's like the number one way, right? Like taking animals into your home and caring for them. But Anne and Carrie do so much more than just that. And one of those things is that they're foster mentors. So this is a picture of one of our mentor meetings that we had. Gosh, this was back in, I think this was 2018. Pre-COVID, of course, where we could actually meet in person. We have these quarterly meetings where all the mentors get together and we talk about program updates and we do questions and we have a meal together and we socialize and kind of keep the group cohesive. And we do this at one of the volunteers' homes. So backtracking a little bit, what is a foster mentor? If you guys aren't familiar with our program, it is based on these mentors. These mentors are experienced foster parents. So they've fostered kittens and cats and bottle babies and pregnant ones and sick ones. They've done it all, and they've agreed to step up to a higher level and mentor new foster parents. So they take on, as mentees, people that live near them. So when we recruit new foster parents, we look to see where they live closest to the nearest mentor, and we ask that mentor, hey, can you take this new person on? So each of our mentors might have like anywhere from like 3 to 15 foster parents that are under their wing that they take care of, and those new foster parents can call them about anything. So they're like a brand new foster parent, they've read the manual, they've taken home kittens, and they're like, wait, my kittens are having diarrhea, what do I do again? They aren't sure, they can't find in the manual, they call their mentor. And this person's a volunteer, so it really takes a huge amount of time off of me and a pressure off of me as the foster coordinator to have this buffer of somebody that they can call where they don't have to reach out to me. If we have 150 foster families and at any one point, there's probably 200 kittens in foster. If I was getting those emails and calls for every single one of those, I'd be overwhelmed immediately, and I wouldn't be able to work on program improvements, and I wouldn't be able to work on all the extra things that that I do to make the program really a good one. So these people are just, they're the best. The other thing that they do, well, in non-COVID times, they are trained to give subcutaneous fluids and FERCP vaccines. So they actually go over to the mentee's home, and they can, if the kittens are sick and they need fluids, they can give those. If they're due for their vaccines, they can give those. So the kittens don't actually need to come into our hospital and take up our veterinary team's time for simple things like that. Now, obviously, if it gets above and beyond their abilities, then yes, it does get elevated to the hospital. But it's a huge time save for our hospital to not have to see kittens for basic illnesses. Our mentors can also approve starting simple medications. So if there's just an eye infection, they're approved to start tobramycin. If there's a simple upper respiratory infection, they can have them start amoxicillin. And they have a whole manual that they follow. So this is all under the directive of our medical director and veterinarian. And as long as they're following that manual and doing things exactly under there, they're allowed to essentially prescribe medications via her direction. Did I hear someone asking a question, or is that just a microphone? Maybe not. Okay. Like I said, you're welcome to just unmute yourself and ask if you'd like, or put it in the chat. In fact, I'm going to pull up the chat window here so that I can see it. Okay. So yeah, backbone of our foster program is these mentors, and they do come and go. So actually, right now, looking at this picture, only maybe two of these mentors are still around. So we had a big changeover maybe a year or two ago, where a lot of these folks retired from their positions. They were in them for a long time, and they moved on to other things, all on good terms, of course. And we have a whole new group of folks that we trained, and we're always training new mentors. Once they've been there for a year or two and they seem like they are good with people, and that they're compassionate, that they have the skills and knowledge, then we go ahead and get them trained if they're interested. We tell them it only takes about an hour to 2 a week to take phone calls and do home visits. That's about on average. On the really busy season, when you're going to people's homes, it can take more to like 3 to 4 hours a week. So that's about the commitment they're making. We also do a hands-on training. So they actually come into the shelter and they learn from us directly how to administer eye medications, how to mix up like a slurry for kittens who aren't eating well or who are weaning, how to give subcutaneous fluids, how to give FERCP vaccines, how to do various low stress hold techniques. So rather than scruffing, like how to use towels to do different holds. They learn, how to give oral medications, just little tips and tricks that they can use to teach their foster parents. We also have a Google group that they join, so that's how we communicate with them. And if there are questions, they can ask each other things. So they can actually work together to figure out answers rather than having to come to me. So that's basically mentors. Does anybody have any questions about how that works? They are great, and you should get some. That's my recommendation. They're my favorite.
That's maybe the best advice all week. Mentors are great. You should get some.
That's all I gotta say. Done. No. Moving on, we also have this another level of volunteers called a mentor assistant, and this is actually only recently implemented in the last few years. And they are like a step down. So they're above a foster parent, but not quite a mentor yet. So these are your folks who you're actually like grooming to be a mentor, but maybe they're like, I'm not so sure I'm quite ready for that commitment yet. just get them to be an assistant first, and then there'll be no time before they're going to be a mentor. And what the assistants do is just the technical part. So they do the hands-on. They do FERCP vaccines and fluids. Those are the main two things, although they can do some other hands-on things as well. But under the direction of a mentor, if the mentor is, say, not able to get over to the foster parent's home, they will ask one of the mentor assistants in their area to go for them and say it's for vaccines, or the kittens are not feeling well and they think they need to get some fluids. They'll send their mentor assistant over. So they have those two main skills, and then they're the eyes and the ears of the mentor. So if they go over and see that the kittens aren't looking well, you know, they can report back to the mentor and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. What would you like to do? So they don't actually make any decisions. They don't have to like follow the manual and tell foster parents when to start certain medications, but it is like a little entry-level way to get into it and start getting more comfortable with it. We actually encourage them to do that before they become a mentor. And you can see this is kind of an example of what that hands-on training looks like. We're having, you know, we actually are still doing that right now, believe it or not. We just started it up again now that people are getting vaccinated. So we have them do a video training where they watch how to give a vaccine and how to give fluids. And then they read through a protocol, and then they get scheduled for a one-on-one masked training at the shelter. So obviously this picture here is not during COVID times, but it's a similar idea. They come in and we pick a cat who needs a vaccine, and they would demonstrate to us that they know how to do it. And sometimes that can take a couple of trainings. So you've got people who are nurses, you've got people who are, you know, have given a vaccine before, are comfortable with needles, and it's going to take no time for them to learn it. In fact, nurses are a great place to look for these types of volunteers. There's other folks who have never done anything with a needle before. That's how I was when I started out in animal care, and it just takes a little bit more practice. So have them come in a couple times, have them practice with the mentor first before they go on their own. It just takes a little bit of time to get that comfort level. So that's a mentor assistant. I would say we have about, let's see, right now they're not as active because we can't go to people's homes, but I will tell you that we did come up with an alternative plan during COVID, where instead of the mentors or mentor assistants going to the foster's home, the people who were willing could do vaccines and fluids in their homes. So the foster parents would bring it to the mentor assistant's home, do a no contact drop, and then they would go in and get their stuff done and then send them back out. So it still took the pressure off the hospital, but it didn't require anyone to go into anyone's home. So that was kind of our temporary modification. Any questions on mentor assistance?
One of the things I do want to ask you, Mary, I feel like you probably are going to talk about this, but as you mentioned trainings and job descriptions and things, are those things all available to folks?
Yes. So we have a website. Well, of course we have a website, but we have a web page on our site dedicated to fostering for Rockstars. And it has all of our like volunteer job descriptions and all of our manuals and everything that you could possibly want that we use in our program available for download. And I can put that in the chat in a little bit, or if you want to put it in the chat for me, we can put that link in there. And
I sure can. I just wasn't sure, like having video trainings, that's a pretty recent development with COVID and stuff. And so I wasn't sure if those were going to be available. I'm real excited that
oh, you mean the ones where we had, yeah, because our vet did she made showing someone how to give a vaccine, and you can find those online. Like we looked around and you can find ones that are like on YouTube or whatnot, but we just decided to make our own. It's pretty simple. And yes, I think I can ask about sharing that. It's not currently on that page though. So I will definitely ask Christy if we can get that up there.
Awesome, thank you. I just threw the link in the chat. It's Cat Adoption Team's page and Fostering for Rockstars.
Thank you. Yeah, we were really excited to get that vaccine and fluids training back up, because not only can the mentor assistants get trained this way, but if a foster parent wants to learn to do their own, like maybe they don't want to help anyone else, then that's fine. But they're like, I want to take some pressure off my mentor and I can learn this and just do it for my own kittens. Great, we will train you. Fluids especially, everyone knows like fluids are the magic thing to bring a kitten around who's not feeling well, right? And if you have to wait to get an appointment or you have to wait to your mentor to come over, you know, that's critical time there. You might as well just learn to do it on your own. And it's super easy to teach someone to do that. Okay. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit here. And we're actually going to talk about some of the volunteers that I have that come to the shelter. So we have obviously a lot of supplies. On the right picture here, we have our baby bags or foster bags, as we call them. And we give our foster parents a lot of supplies. So all that stuff there, plus lots more things. We keep adding to it, basically. But what we do is we send out a bag with a litter of kittens or, you know, with an adult cat or whatever it is. And when that bag stays with that group and comes back with that group. So we send it out, they have to return it at the end when they're done fostering that group, and then we clean it. So we don't just like send it right back out with somebody else. So there's a whole process where we have to go through and check expiration dates and refill things and wipe things down and send things through the laundry. And we have, again, that protocol for how you do all that is actually on our Fostering for Rockstars page 2. But this is a super easy job for a volunteer. You can actually just take that cleaning protocol and hand it to somebody who's, you know, maybe just there for the day and needs something to do, and pretty quickly show them how to do that and have them clean all of your baby bag supplies for you. Same with setting up the new bags. So once they've gone through and cleaned, then they can go through and prep some new ones for you. I actually have 2 volunteers, Deb and Carol, right now, who are wonderful. And they come in, let's see, Deb comes in on Sundays and Carol comes in on Wednesdays, which is perfect. And they go through, we have a dirty bin where all the returned bags came in, and they go through and they clean everything. They check them all back in on my checkout sheets. They prep me some new ones. And that's just about perfect for kitten season for me to have someone twice a week come through and do all that. It seems to work pretty well. We do have a lot of supplies though, so it's okay if some supplies sit there for a few days. We do a kitten shower every year, so we get tons of stuff donated. So if you have fewer supplies, you might need to be doing it more often. But this is, like I said, just a super easy job, and they communicate with me when there's things that are running low, we need to resupply. They'll actually, as they get more experienced, they can actually refill some of those supplies. So I'll show them like how to make labels and where to find this item or that item. And if you keep them around and you keep them happy, they can be really, really valuable resource for you. And they stayed throughout COVID. Like, so both Deb and Carol have been coming, even though I was working remotely, they were coming in independently and just continuing to do this without me even being there, which is pretty amazing. So on the left side here, this is actually a picture of our kitten headquarters lobby. And these are all foster supplies as well. So we are a Purina shelters. So we have all this Purina food that the fosters can use, that we use at the shelter, and that the adopters get. And so on the left side there, that's all foster stuff. So we've got like dry food and wet food and kitten variety and adult variety. And then we have like specialty items. So we often send out, with our socialization kittens, we send out baby food and churros, which are like enticing things to get them to, you know, be more friendly. We send out wand toys to help engage them. We have some like forms that they need to have, like a behavior journal and a drop-off form with collar. So basically all this stuff. Below the tables is litter and other items like that. And that stuff all has to be restocked. So similar to my baby bag volunteers is a shelter job. They just come in and make sure that there's plenty of each item there, so that when a foster does come to pick up, we're not scrambling. We're not like, oh wait, we have to go find you food. Oh, you need this or that. We've got our baby bags ready to go. We've got stock of food and litter and whatever else, like supplementary items that we're going to add to their bag. Maybe they need a bottle feeding kit. Maybe they need, you know, some pregnant cat supplies. It's all right there and ready to go and stocked by a volunteer. So we don't have to worry about that. Anybody have any questions about supplies? If you're wondering, we do have our medications locked up, so the volunteers don't have access to prescription medications.
I actually do have a question.
Sure, yeah.
So things like scales and maybe like crates, or I don't know, like the larger kind of reusable items, obviously like a heaty pad's going to go in and out with every litter, you know, things like that. Do you ever have your repeat fosters just keep those items so you're not bringing them in, bringing them out, cleaning that, you know, obviously you kind of put more on the foster to just keep track of what they need, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so we do encourage our foster parents to purchase their own scales or warming discs if they're regular fosters and they're willing to do that. And if that's the case, we don't have to send them with one, and we can save it for other folks who do need them.
Right.
But if they are not purchasing it on their own, we still ask them to return it every time, because it's hard to distinguish with the folks who are not going to continue fostering. Like somebody might be taking a little bit of a break, and we could be using that supply during that time. So it just makes more sense for us. And someone might think like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing this and I'll, you know, hang on to it. And, you know, then it's a few weeks or they forget and it's sitting in their room, and then our supplies are everywhere and we don't have any for the cats.
Yeah. And I've ended up with 3 scales in my home, or 0 when I either have 0 or 3. So, okay. Yeah. Interesting. I just was thinking about, like, I know we've cut corners just on our overhead in the shelter doing it that way. But then we're scrambling like, great, we have 4 litters to send out and no scales. So interesting. Good thought. Thank you for sharing that information.
Yeah, absolutely. Scales are precious. Like, I get it.
Right?
We're always running out. We're always asking for more. And definitely encourage your folks who are going to do it regularly. Just get a kitchen scale. You know, they work fine as long as it's a gram scale. Like, you can get one for like less than $20 at the store, if they're going to do it regularly.
Mary, do you have a supply of items that fosters can purchase from you?
From Cat Adoption Team, we have a retail store, so, but it's mostly like, you know, they can buy cat toys and cat trees and scratchers and food and beds and whatnot, but we don't sell, like, say, you know, our scales or any of our like supplies like that. No.
Do you have, this is a series of questions, sorry. Do you have an Amazon wish list that you share with your supporters so that they can purchase these supplies for your fosters to use?
Yes, absolutely. And that's how we get all these supplies, other than the food, which we get from Purina. Everything that you see pretty much from that baby bag is donated, except for like the syringes and the medicines. But we have a kitten shower every April that's going on right now, actually. And I have a huge stack of supplies that people have bought us, which is amazing. And we got that from our Amazon wish list. It's primarily our Amazon wish list that we get supplies from. We also have a Chewy wish list now, which is new this year.
For folks who didn't know that Chewy had wish lists.
I think it just started.
Yeah, we just added one for us. I think it is a new thing, and yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, because there's some folks who don't, you know, appreciate Amazon for, you know, good reasons. So if you want those folks to be able to buy you things, Chewy's a good alternative. We used to do the thing where we'd say like, here's a list of things we need if you want to go buy them at the store. We found that in recent years, that's just, you know, it's not as much of a thing. People aren't doing that as much. They want to just be able to go online and click a link, and, you know, they have Amazon Prime or whatever, and it's just very easy for them to do it. So it's just gone entirely to that form recently. But we get our scales. You can see we have that packet of pumpkin in that picture. We now use pumpkin powder, but either one works. You can get that donated. That's good for kittens with diarrhea. Let's see, we get all of our nail trimmers and flea combs and baby shampoo, toothbrushes, all that stuff, the washcloths. We get little A&D ointment packets, all the scales, all the warming discs. all the KMR and bottle feeding kits, all that stuff. The wand toys, like I was talking about, the baby food, the churros, all donated.
Okay, one more supply question.
Sure.
Sorry.
Mhm.
So I haven't run a neonate foster program for several years. Do you participate, or do you know if it still exists? Pet Ag used to have a program where you could save all your UPC codes from your KMR and submit them to get free KMR. Are you
I have
familiar with that, or do you know if they still do it?
never heard of that.
Awesome. So everybody that's on here, check it out. I cannot promise you they still do it. But up till last year, I know they did. It's
Interesting.
so we used to, when I was running a foster program, I used to cut all the UPC labels out before I would send KMR home with people, and then send them in, and they you can use them to get 5-pound bags of the powdered KMR.
Wow. You know, we don't do as many bottle babies as probably a lot of shelters do. For whatever reason, it's just not as big of a need in our area for us. But when we do get them in, we've actually switched over to Breeder's Edge formula, which only comes in the powder form. But there was a study at San Diego Humane Society where they looked at KMR versus Breeder's Edge, and they found that the kittens did just much better. They had less diarrhea, they gained weight faster on the Breeder's Edge. So that's what we ask for on our Amazon wish list. Well, we still do have some of the KMR cans, as you can see, because they don't have a liquid version, and we like to send our foster parents with like an emergency kit. So say they have a mom with kittens and the kittens aren't gaining weight and they need to be supplemented, they have like some liquid KMR ready to go.
Awesome. And Shelby just threw the link into the chat for the frequent buyer program. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Shelby.
KMR is cheaper, so something to consider. You know, if you're buying it in bulk, that can be some pretty expensive stuff, but you can also get it donated. Okay, I think that was all I had to say about supplies. I'll say that keeping our, you know, the picture on the left of with all the supplies on the table there, I would say, you know, some staff members help out with keeping that up to date and keeping it stocked, but the volunteer I have comes in and does it once a week and just like heavy stocks it so that it's ready to go for the full week. So I'd say, you know, depending on what you got going on, a 1 day a week person would probably be fine. Okay, next slide. Oh, sorry, that's kind of blurry. I'm sure you guys all do foster trainings, right, of some sort. Maybe you have a recorded one, or maybe you have an in-person one, or maybe you just talk to people over the phone. Well, we have, we used to do it in person. People would come down to the shelter and they'd spend a couple hours with us on a Saturday morning or a Tuesday evening or something like that. And we would go through like a 2-hour training with them. Now it's on Zoom. And regardless, I have a amazing volunteer. I already mentioned him before. His name's Kerry Smith, and he does foster training with me. And it is super helpful because I'm sure you guys have all experienced this. Talking at people for 2 hours is exhausting, and listening to the same person for 2 hours is also exhausting. So it's really nice to have somebody to kind of split it up with you, and it's nice to have the perspective of another foster volunteer. So it's not just me, the employee who's boss lady who's telling you what to do and knows all the rules. It's somebody who's a foster parent who's been around a while, who understands all the rules, who likes public speaking or is comfortable with it, and can talk to them kind of on their level and talk anecdotally about their experiences fostering. So Carrie likes to put in like little excerpts about like, well, this one time I was fostering this mom and, or I was fostering this adult cat with an injury, and it was really rewarding because I got to see her get better and come back to the shelter. And he's really good at like storytelling. So if you can identify one of your foster parents who's good with people, comfortable public speaking, and You could just train them on kind of what to say on some slides, give them the easier slides. It's really a great addition to your foster training, and it'll help you out a lot. Carrie also does volunteer orientation, and he's a mentor, and he does, helps out with vaccine and fluids training. He does everything. He's great. But really, like, honestly, if, he might not be doing that with me forever, but I can already identify some people, maybe ones that are already mentors who would be really good at this, and I could bring on, and you just go through a couple practice rounds with them until they feel comfortable. And then I'm always kind of helping him too. So there might be things that have changed, or that he's, said something slightly not correct, and I'll jump in and add some things and help him out. And sometimes I'll forget some things and he'll jump in and add them in. So probably the least necessary of my volunteer help. I could do this on my own, but it is really great to have someone there to support you and share a little bit of that talking burden, for sure. I think we're leaning towards just having this recorded though, and people can just watch it on their own time, rather than and then saying, okay, we're going to do one of these each month and have people come live. We're actually probably going to start doing it where we just do a formal recording and then only update it as needed. Anybody have any questions, comments about that? Okay. Just a couple more things I want to talk about. So I have a volunteer. Her name is Mary Gerlowski. It's a little confusing because we're both Mary, but they call me Mary C and her Mary G. And she, of course, is one of those super volunteers who does everything around the shelter. But I like to think of her as my volunteer because she keeps track of all of my lists. So we have, in our program, we track data outside of our database, which not everybody does, but we really like to do that because we can collect data in a certain way that our database isn't very good at doing. So we have what we call an ultimate foster list, and we keep track of everybody who goes out to foster and reasons and illnesses that come up, and if they move foster homes. We have our own like special way of tracking data that way. And if I had to enter everybody onto that spreadsheet, it would take me forever. So Mary G does this for me. She also keeps my foster kitten list up to date. So on our website, we have this kitten list, which is all of our kittens who are available for adoption in foster or available for pre-adoption in foster. So before they're spayed or neutered. And she, when the kittens go out to foster, I CC her on all those paperwork emails that go out, and she adds them to the list for me so that I don't have to go in and enter all that data. So it's a lot of manual, like kitten's name and color and gender, and do they have a mom, and what foster are they with, and pretty basic stuff. And she can gather that from the paperwork I send her and then just enter it all in, and then it's ready to go for me. So that's a, kind of boring but fun data entry for somebody to do. I don't think all of you will have that kind of need. It kind of depends on how you do your data, but I could see a data entry volunteer working in a lot of different ways depending on how your system is set up. We have volunteers that help with our intake paperwork. So, you might be performing the physical exams, but you have a volunteer on the computer next to you who's entering, the physical exams in and the basic info and making the record for the cat. So we have folks that do that too. So data entry is super valuable. We all know how time consuming that is. And then the other data entry, this is the other data entry volunteer position we have. Nils Wester is my super computer volunteer. He's kind of a techie guy, and he's perfect for this position because it requires you to look at the responses on a Google form and go enter that into our database. So he has to be familiar with our database and, you know, kind of familiar with some medical terms and familiar with our treatment instructions and all of that. So he's pretty quick. So if you're looking for somebody to do something more technical like this, you know, look for your computer savvy folks. So basically this form that we use, it's a Google form. When the foster parents have given an FERCP vaccine in their home, or their mentor's done it, or if they've given Strongid, or their mentor had them start amoxicillin or fluids or tobramycin or any of those things, we need to know about it, right? Because it needs to get into their medical records. So they fill out this form. And then we get our little responses sheet, and that goes to Nils, who checks it, and he enters that into our Shelter Buddy database. And we're pretty lucky in that Shelter Buddy is an online program, so he can do this from home. So he can go check the Google form, pull up Shelter Buddy. He has his own login that he uses, and he just enters in medications and consultations for us. So it's a little bit more technical. It took some more training. He has to get updated when we update our, you know, protocols through the hospital. Your hospital and your veterinarian have to approve this volunteer to do this and feel comfortable with their level of training. But if you can get it going, it definitely is a huge time saver for me, that I don't have to go in and manually do all those entries. And Google Forms, I can't tell you how much I love those. They're free, and they save me a ton of time. So anytime I'm doing like a poll of our foster volunteers, or I'm like trying to schedule some sort of meeting with them, or I want to find out who's interested in this training, it's a Google form every single time, because then all their answers are populated into this spreadsheet for me, and I don't have to manually move anything over. So if I just ask them and all 150 of them responded in an email, that's not very good format, right? And I used to do that, but Google Forms, that's my plug. Any questions about data entry of the medical variety?
Do you have any issues with or concerns about like privacy of maybe where the cats came from?
Yeah, good question, because that volunteer has access, right, to the animal's record. So, you know, I could see if you work in a municipal shelter, I can see how this gets a little bit more tricky. Since we are a private shelter, it's, you know, we're not dealing with like any sort of like cruelty cases or anything like that. So we're a little more lenient on it, but you can in Shelter Buddy give someone restricted access. So they only have like abilities to do certain things or only view certain areas. But most of our volunteers can actually view, like volunteers that work in our database can see where that cat came from. They can see, you know, the surrender form that person filled out with, you know, it has their name on it, it has their information on it. We just make sure that our volunteers understand the sensitivity of that information, and we don't give access to folks who shouldn't have it, basically. So it's we trust you, we're going to give you this access. You need to understand that some of this is personal information and not to use it outside of the shelter use. All right, so that's all I have. Just a cute kitten for you who looks like kind of question-y. Anybody have any questions?
Gosh, Mary, this has been so useful. I'm constantly amazed every day by the variety of ways that volunteers support our life-saving efforts across the country. And I know some organizations are really limited in their ability to have time to recruit and train and support volunteers. And I was wondering if you had any tips on maybe what the first place to start is.
Gotcha. Okay, so if you're like, I want to do all these things, but what would be the best thing to just get going with? I mean, I think the mentor program is sort of our foundation, and the one that I would really recommend getting going with first. It's just huge all around to have that support system for your foster parents. It's good for the foster parents, it's good for the hospital, it's good for you. That's just an all around, must do. And you do have to get your hospital on board. You got to get your veterinarian on board. And through our Fostering for Rockstars program, we've actually told folks that if they're having trouble, they can call and we can get them set up with their vet set up to talk to our vet and see how it works. And maybe they get them more on board with it. Because I think that's what folks worry most about getting a mentor program started, is that they're going to get pushback from their medical team.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Do you have, at CAT, do you have an on-site medical team?
We do. We have a full hospital. We have a medical director and then another full-time veterinarian. And yeah, we do all our spay neuters in-house and all our medical in-house.
Fantastic. I'm really curious to hear. There's some familiar faces on the call today that I've seen on a couple others this week. And I almost wish that you guys had started the week, because I think this foundation of creating structure and creating job descriptions and identifying your needs is really useful for anybody that wants to start or expand a volunteer program. Oh, I forgot what that was leading into. This is what happens when you do a live webinar. So, I'm just gonna let it go.
You might think of it. I was going to mention, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about foster training, but we also do like a pregnant cat and bottle baby training. And then we also do a kitten socialization training. And so those are like specialized trainings that foster parents can take after they're comfortable just doing regular kittens and they want to learn more. In those, I also have folks that help me with that. So for the pregnant and bottle baby one, we have a volunteer who's just really good at that. That's her specialty. She does the bottle babies and she's taken plenty of pregnant cats, and she has all that hands-on experience that, I have a little bit of, but that's not a part of my job description, is to be an expert in all those areas or to have that hands-on experience. Like I'm more book smart in that area, right? So to have Shelby there to answer questions that, she has personal experience with is really helpful. Whereas, I can just give them the book answers. So, and again, it's nice to have that second person there. And then with socialization, it's not a volunteer, but one day it's going to be. But right now, Christy, our operations director, does socialization training with me, and we kind of go back and forth, and she brings like her, decades of knowledge to that training, which is really great.
How many hours a week or a month do volunteers dedicate to cat adoption team? Do you have a sense of that?
Oh, you mean all of our volunteer hours in the whole organization?
Oh, I forget. You guys have like care team too. How many do you have sense of how many support the foster program?
So, oh gosh, I don't know that I know the number off the top of my head, but what I can tell you, which is pretty cool, and I like to tell our foster team this, is that the foster care hours make up more than half of all of CAT's volunteer hours. So we have volunteers that come in and caregive, and we have transport volunteers, and we have hospital volunteers. Like volunteers are everywhere, all over the shelter, outside of the shelter, taking photos, writing bios, doing all this stuff. And when we do the numbers every year, the amount in the foster program is actually like just over half of all the volunteer hours, which I just think is great.
Wow. And how many cats or kittens go through your foster program? Kind of
yeah, so it's about it averages about 1,000, although it's been going more like to 1,200 or 1,300 in the past couple of years. And we just started a formal adult program, and so that's added a couple hundred adults each year. So in total, we're looking more like 13 to 1400.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm just so excited to see so many folks moving towards foster work. And we all know that housing pets in homes is way less stressful than in a shelter environment. No matter how nice your shelter is, it's still a shelter, right? So, gosh, one of the
Absolutely. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say this, we learned that this last year that we sent almost all of our kittens to foster regardless of age. So it used to be that we would have them in foster care until they were 8 weeks or ready for spay neuter, and then they would come and live at the shelter if they weren't pre-adopted. And last year we just couldn't do that because we didn't have the ability to caregive for that many animals on site because we could only have so many people there, right? So what we did is we just heavily shifted towards a foster model, and we said, basically, let's get as many cats and kittens out of the shelter and not plan to bring them back unless we need to. And so we really relied on our foster volunteers to not only foster them, but help find them homes from their homes. So keep them until they're like basically ready to go home. And to foster adults and to foster kittens that are, over 8 weeks, but just, aren't at the shelter. And we found that our upper respiratory rates were way down. Like we didn't have nearly as many sick kittens because we weren't overcrowded and they weren't living at the shelter where they could get illnesses. And we also saw our stress and our adult cats go down because there were fewer cats around, and the ones who were really sensitive to being at the shelter, we were sending out to foster for socialization. So it was pretty amazing to see that happen. I mean, you don't want to say it, but like the bright side of COVID, I guess, that happened, and that we're not going to revert entirely back to the old ways. We're going to have some sort of hybrid model.
Yeah, we did something similar here at APA, and I think before COVID, everyone sort of had this belief that there just wasn't enough foster homes, or they just couldn't possibly train that many. And so to really be able to shift resources in that way, it's so exciting to know that all of these cats and kittens are going to be way less stressed and have individualized attention.
Absolutely. And I know there was some concern like, oh, when people go back to work, then they're just going to drop out. You won't have that anymore. And I think, the nice thing is a lot of people learned that fostering an adult cat doesn't take that much time. It's just like having a regular cat, unless they're really sick or something like that, you don't need to be at home to take care of them. Kittens, you may need to be a little bit more home, but even then, like they've already kind of figured out, okay, this is fun, I'm enjoying it, and I can still do this when I go back to work. It won't be that big of a deal. So I'm really looking forward to that and keeping our adult volunteers going.
Well, fantastic. I want to give a last chance for anybody to ask questions that they may have, either unmuting or drop something in the chat. But Mary, I am so thankful for everything that I have learned from Cat Adoption Team over the years, and trying to emulate a lot of the structure that you have. You set the bar real high, but all of the work that you've put in to the creation of these job descriptions and standardization is, I think, really paying off in life-saving.
Well, thank you. That's very nice to say. I also appreciate Cat and all that they've taught me.
I remembered what my question was from earlier. So you have at least from the outside, it seems like you have very clear definitions of the types of volunteer needs that you have and the tasks related to those. Do you recruit specifically to fill those needs, or do you recruit generally and kind of help people move into the roles that fit them?
That's a good question. So, I'm not the volunteer manager. We actually have someone separate in that role. That's Nancy Puro is our volunteer manager. And she actually does the non-foster parent recruitment. So if somebody wants to foster, they kind of come directly to me. But if we're recruiting, say for like a baby bag person or data entry or, you know, something along those lines, I will ask her to put something out in our weekly help wanted email that goes out to our regular volunteers. And it might say like, we're looking for a data entry person for the foster program. And then she actually kind of filters through, because she knows our volunteers and she knows what their skill sets are. And if somebody comes and says they're interested, she can kind of give me an idea. Like, I think this person would be good. Like they have this skill set, or they're, you know, they work with computers, or they seem pretty savvy on, you know, they seem reliable, and this would be a good recruit for this. So we're actually pulling from our current volunteer set often for that role. So if you have just regular volunteers who work at your shelter who want to help in other ways, it's always a good idea to reach out to them. So I haven't had to like say, go to Facebook or social media and say, hey, we need somebody to do this. But I could see if I couldn't find somebody internal, like we absolutely could go that route too. We could advertise it publicly, and we have done that for certain positions in the past. And even if you do get somebody who's interested, like you said, it may not be the right position for them, but there's always more stuff to do. So some people come to me and they want to foster, and then they find out that they need to have, you know, a separate space to keep the kittens. And we reroute them to the shelter instead. Okay, well, we do have these opportunities to do this or that. We can find something for them. We will get them doing something.
There's no shortage of work, and there's no shortage of animals in need. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And I would say the biggest thing I've learned from working with volunteers, and also being a volunteer myself, which, you know, is actually a really valuable experience to volunteer for organizations to kind of see what it's like. I think the most important thing I've learned is to value that person's time. So when they're coming in to help, like I've been places where it's like, okay, just come in and I'm going to have you help with this data thing or whatever. And the person's not prepared for you. They don't know what they want you to do yet. And they kind of spend all this time trying to like figure it out and help you. And then you don't really feel like you're helping them. Or they're like, oh, I don't have anything for you today. And so I make it a priority to make sure that I know we have work for that person coming in, that they know what it is. It's something pretty simple that they can do each time they come in. So I think they prefer that because it's easy to remember, right? You come in, you're going to do this one job. It's going to take you an hour or two, and you're going to do that each time, and that and you're going to get better at it, and you're going to get more skilled, and we can advance you in that level. And you know, you don't need my assistance every time you're there. You can do it independently. And then I make it a priority to let them know if there isn't work, so that they don't waste their time coming in. So if I know it's the off season and we're not going to have a lot of foster bags to clean, I'll actually call them off. I'll say, you know, all right, don't worry about coming in this weekend. We'll check in next week and see if there's anything for you to do, or switch them over to some other task that needs doing. But definitely keep it simple. You know, repetitive is okay to have them keep doing the same thing week after week. That's what's going to save you time, is not having to sit there and work with them and train them. You want them to be working while you're working on something else.
That's so important. I know respecting volunteers' time is just, it's so easy to let that kind of a thing slip, and it's so important that they could choose to give their time to any organization, and they're choosing you. Well, unless there's any last questions, I just want to thank you, Mary, and Cat Adoption Team for joining us today. It's always so great to hear about the ways that different organizations are saving lives across the country. And this wraps up our Let's Talk About Volunteers Volunteer Appreciation Week series through American Pets Alive. It's our first one. I learned a ton hosting these, and I worked with our team. What we're going to do is we're going to load all of these recordings up onto our YouTube channel and have them available for everyone to watch. And hopefully we do this again next year. And Mary, hopefully you come and join us again, because your insight into the ways that volunteers can support foster is just amazing. And again, I'm so thankful that you were able to join us today.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. Happy to be here.
All right. Everyone have a great rest of your weekend. Keep saving lives. Have a adoption-filled, fun Saturday afternoon and Sunday. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you.